Here goes. Hello, welcome to week 17 of RiSE, the podcast. It's the weekly podcast that intends to really bring positive change to the world. It defends the small business owner, and we all know over the past 21 months, we've really been, rocked. But what we also bring is creativity, new ideas, problem solving, independent critical thinking as entrepreneurs. Plus, we're all working to get it and find a new path forward and pave that path with passion, blood, sweat, and tears to make it all happen. And each week we feature great guests who are making a difference for good. And whether it's how we do business, whether it's how we lead at work, make communities stronger, eradicating poverty, touting abundance, new ways to heal, new ways to be healthy, empowering our youth while respecting our elders. It's all here. And that's the kind of guest we have each week for you. And really the show is a journey of ideas, solutions, and new thinking that has us create a vision for where and who we want to be. And today's guest is David Fairweather. He's an author, as you can see in behind, and really big on goals. But he began his work designing guided missiles as an aerospace engineer. Mm-hmm. And these days, he guides minds as a registered psychotherapist and high-performance mind coach. He believes that we all have the potential to live lives of passion, great purpose, if we can develop greater self-awareness and self-discipline. He's also the author of Winning Mindset, psychological strategies that drive you to succeed, and creator of the Smarter Goals Guide, which I think I see in the background.
I see in the background, yes.
Yeah. It's in the middle there. Yeah, thank you. Shameless self-promotion, I love it. And it's 7 steps to setting highly effective goals. And David's main focus is on setting and helping you set and achieve great goals and utilize tools and techniques from coaching, psychotherapy to help his clients ace them. So welcome. And a timely topic given the time of year, given that we're ending one year, 2021. I think for some of us, it's like, thank God, but we're getting ready for the next. Where are people at with goals? That's what I really want to kind of start our conversation with today, David. And there's a lot to cover too. But where are we at with goals, especially in this time of just like so much change? Where you could have a goal, but just with all the sort of radical change, or a lockdown comes, or something like that happens to maybe take us out of that game. Where are we at today collectively with goals, and where are you seeing those that you work with in your practice?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show.
Pleasure.
Inviting me, David. So it's great to be here. And again, a great time of year to be talking about goals.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we at collectively? I've not done the survey to find out specifically how everyone is, all 7 billion of them, but generally there's a very slim slice of the population that actually gets around to setting goals. I think Harvard did a research project on it once and found out maybe it's 2% of people. And so where collectively everyone is probably in the 98% of people that are either whimsically setting goals and not following through on them, or they'd like to have a goal, but they don't really do the work to set it, or they are kind of victims of life at the moment, as life keeps throwing hand grenades and bombs at us every minute, and there's a new thing to kind of respond to. I feel that we've had to pivot. And some people are still recovering from having to pivot a little bit, which I think is making this year's goal setting season really important, because if everything's been all bets are off for the last 18 months, 2 years, now seems to be about the time where there's at least some predictability that some people can have in goal setting. So I would like to think that people are waking up to the need to set goals again. They've had their time off, they've had their locked in time, and that they're really getting back to goal setting. But again, research would suggest that not everyone, just really the people that are driven and feeling purposeful about not letting life get in the way of their dreams, because there are so many things we don't let life get in the way of. But then when we set a goal, first thing that happens, we're like, it's not meant to be. Or maybe the universe was testing to see if you were serious. So I'm sure they're debating whether or not they should be moving forwards and setting goals, or whether the goalposts are going to keep moving and they should just wait for a bit before they get around to it. But,
are you seeing that happen? Are people waiting, putting it off? Do you see that in your practice?
Well, I see quite a large range of people, and I do insist on people having some kind of goal to set for themselves. But I am actually noticing people aren't looking to set as big or as tangible a goal for themselves at the moment. So I quite typically would fly away 4 or 5 times a year to different places, Nashville, Vegas, etc., to go on training courses. Phoenix is a big one for me. But I'm not planning them right now, because I don't quite have the confidence of how it's going to be. Is it going to be problematic? Am I going to be stranded in Phoenix because of some mandate? My goals have changed to be a bit more close to home, which is why I've been able to put so much focus in on the last year of actually publishing this Smarter Goals Guide and making it available for people to download. So I'm sure people are waking up to needing goals. Whether they're there or not, I'm not sure, but maybe we can push them in this podcast, David.
Right. So then we have to maybe shift our expectations. And how are we at shifting our expectations? Because I don't know about you, when I get something in my head, I like to accomplish it. And my goal list is usually it starts with the things that irritate me. So let's say, like, one of my projects usually over the holidays is to do a declutter project at home and to get organized, to let go so I can bring in the new. So how are we at managing expectations? Because sometimes I think in the past 2 years of what we've all collectively been living through, we've had to adjust along the way, as you said, pivot. So how are we at managing expectations, David?
Well, it requires change, and my experience tells me that human beings are creatures of habit, and our habit is comfort. And so I think human beings are creatures of comfort, and anything that takes them out of that comfort zone throws them into a tizzy. And so they do like to, well, we do, because I am one of them, I'm not an alien. We do like to aim towards comfort and keep comfort. And so doing what we said we'd do can be quite a comfortable thing. If we have to change expectations, that is uncomfortable for us. I know someone that had to change from a Bachelor of Science to a Bachelor of Arts, because during their process of trying to get their degree, they had brain surgery. And that throws a spanner in the works. And I mean, they did struggle for a little while making that decision to pivot and to change their degree. But, after a little bit of trying to hold on to it and finding out that it just causes more hardship than it's worth, they eventually let go and they move over. It has to start appearing more comfortable to take the change than to try to keep up with keeping it the same, because we're all motivated by pain and pleasure. That's this creature of comfort thing. And so if changing seems more unpleasant than pleasant, then they will choose to stay the same. But if staying the same starts to heat up and cause them problems, then the pain of changing starts to seem like quite a pleasant thing. We just have to be able to let go of our preconceived notions and expectations. And we don't jump at doing that to begin with, because that's more change, more difference. And our brains love familiar, it loves routine, and it doesn't want to rethink things every time, which is why so many people have the same thing for breakfast every day. But by lunchtime, they might have a slightly novel meal. But we're not looking for novelty. We want same, comfortably same.
So how do you coach your clients to deal with discomfort and to change the routine? Because I think changing the routine keeps us fresh, it keeps us sharp, it allows for new to come in. So how do you coach your clients and to deal with the discomfort and also to embrace that change?
I help them, as I've just kind of touched on, see the reality of their change. Let's say someone is right-handed. This is a ridiculous example, but I'm just trying to find a thing. But someone's right-handed and someone says, you know what, if you change to be left-handed, that would be good for you. That's a lot of a pain in the ass to do, right, to put it bluntly. And so, but if there was an actual reason why changing hands that they write with is in their best interest, then that discomfort, they would need to frame it as that temporary challenge that leads them to this big outcome. So I think too many people focus on the relief of giving up and the pleasure of not doing anything, instead of the pleasure of succeeding and the pain of giving up. Like, you want this wonderful life for yourself, it needs you to change your routines and your habits. Let's look at what the price you'll pay is if you don't do it, and what the pleasure you'll get if you do it. Because there's always going to be a pain of doing it and a pleasure of not doing it as well, because there's always at least two sides to everything in a three-dimensional universe. Fire is great unless you're burning to death, and then it's awful. Water's fantastic, hydrates you, drowns you. And so that change is good and it is bad, and there's no avoiding that. You can't have a unilateral thing in our universe, because there are always at least two sides to everything, right? It gets flavored with a perspective. And so my work is in uncovering the perspectives and helping them see the real consequences of staying the same, so that they can feel actual motivation to make the change. Obviously assisted by diving deep in the what's in it for you, as I take them through that step in the Smarter Goals Guide.
Right. And you mentioned that there are two sides to everything in the 3D universe.
Yeah.
I'm hearing a lot of talk about quantum thinking, we're moving into the 5-dimensional universe, or 5D. What does that look like to you? This quantum universe, is it we see multiple sides, multiple options? Do we need to start to, how do we shift our thinking away from maybe 3D to a 5D consciousness?
Well, that area is not really filling my mind a great deal these days, just because I know the universe hasn't changed. If someone suddenly found out what gravity really was, it still would be gravity, even though they don't know why large objects with large mass attract objects like magnets, but they're not magnets. It's like, what is that? What is electricity? I think we change the words of things, like, oh, the sun isn't what you think it is, it's actually this, and it's like, oh, okay, but it still is what we thought it was. We just think of it differently. And I mean, the universe isn't changing. It is the same as we've always known it to be, but the way that we think about it might alter. The reason why I focus on there being at least two sides to everything is just because if someone says, oh no, it would be bad to do something, it would also be good to do it. Or if someone says, I can't do something, they also could do it, right? And so I think when people ignore a side of themselves, a shadow side, an unconscious self, or a denied part of self, that's dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
We've all got the potential to kill a human being, even if it wouldn't occur to any of us to do it. Like, I would say I'm a pacifist. I'm not into violence. But if I said, oh, I could never hurt someone, that's not true. I could definitely hurt someone. I wouldn't enjoy doing it. Right? Yeah. So I'm more focused on the bilateral nature of the brain, the fact that we've got logic and we've got emotion, and that, like I say, even if you look at the basic building blocks of the universe, a proton, right? When you look at light, it's either matter or it's energy. In other words, it's either the wave or it's the proton that is going through the wave. And how you look at it, there's at least two sides to what that is as a foundational building block, right? I don't think we can escape from this. So I'm just really focused when someone says, no, I cannot do that ever. I'm like, really? Because I think maybe you could if you were motivated to, right? I think the quantum nature of the universe fascinates me, but doesn't find its way into the coaching room that much. Mm-hmm. Time travel is theoretically possible, but then you can find an octopus that can change shape and communicate with human beings. It's like, why would anyone eat that? It's like, oh, they're yummy. They're also a terrible thing to eat because they're almost as intelligent as you. You know, I just like to bring the shadow out, the consequences of everything that people like to keep hidden from themselves. I'm sure that's not a very satisfactory quantum answer for you, but
yeah, no, pretty good. I'm pretty impressed. You mentioned, okay, so we're looking at goals. We're looking at cause and effect a little bit, you know, by taking it on and saying yes, and looking at things from both sides, and both sides have possibility. What then gets people into action and overcoming that sort of negative thought process, that perhaps keeps them stuck?
I would glibly say only pain. In other words, there's a lot of things we could do, but I mean, the painful reality is I'm going to die one day, and I'm aware of that. My dog's going to die. It won't shock me. It will deeply upset me when it happens, but it won't shock me. I know it's going to happen. I'm not oblivious to that. And so the fact that life is not infinite comes with pain attached to it. We know we're going to die one day. The dog doesn't know that. They're blissfully ignorant of that, at least allegedly. They might know, like birds follow each other around without communicating, obviously, but generally they might not know. When someone becomes aware of the consequences of inaction, that painful future propels them to do something about it. Because we really are a species of people that are far more motivated to avoid pain than we are to get pleasure. And when you think about that from a comfort standpoint, no one is going to work really gruesomely hard to get a bit more comfortable. If you're already comfortable, great. But people will work horrendously hard to get out of discomfort, right? We work harder to keep what we've got than to earn more than it, which again speaks to why there's only 2% of the planet setting goals. Everyone else is okay. I mean, I don't literally mean that. There's people that are not okay. But at the same time, you know, they are okay. Smiling, happy, poor people, or someone just about to die, but happy, right? They can be okay, even though a terrible thing might be happening to them. I think when we really understand what's in it for us to do something, then we find the motivation to do it. But if we're told by someone else, you need to set a goal, you need to do something, no, I don't, right? So helping them find what drives them on the inside to achieve their goals moves them. And it's going to be a pleasure, or it's going to be the avoidance of pain.
Right.
Both of them.
Yeah. So what works better? Is it emotion, or is it more logic and thinking and facts and figures? What gets us more into action around achieving goals?
We actually like to get stuck in analysis, because if we're stuck in analysis, we don't have to do anything. It's
right.
An excuse. But if I think it's not strictly true, but there's a dominance to our hemispheres in our brain. And so the left hemisphere is typically dominant in analysis and logic. And the right hemisphere is typically dominant in emotion and irration, let's say. And it seems to be a bit of it's a fun thing to say out loud. It seems so simple, but all motion comes from emotion. It's not just the word with an E missing. Literally, we spend our lives doing what we feel like doing. I'd put real money on the fact that I don't believe anyone on planet Earth has ever bought a Porsche or a Ferrari for any logical reason, because it defies the speed limits of the road and it requires a lot more investment. It's an emotional purchase. And so we tend to talk ourselves into the things we feel like having. Logic then helps us do that. It helps us as an afterthought justify the thing we feel like doing, but it doesn't drive anything any more than science drives creativity. I mean, Gene Roddenberry invented the smartphone, not specifically and literally, but the idea of a flip phone device held in the hand. So a creative person came up with that, and then a scientist tried to figure out how to make it happen, which is all logic. But logic doesn't drive the evolution of technology. Creativity does.
Yes.
right? So it's
So
always in the foreground, setting the way, and logic just justifies it behind. But a lot of people think the logic is in front just because they're not aware of that creative aspect of themselves that they may be keeping the shadows.
yeah, and I like what you alluded to at the beginning. You said that logic is going to prevent us from reaching our goals. Emotion is going to help us reach our goals. Because like you alluded to at the beginning, saying that only 2% of us do create goals. And so if you look at that and you're setting goals for yourself, well, by looking at that logically, you're then giving yourself a way out from accomplishing your goal. And you say, well, yeah, only 2%. So, so what if I don't do it, right? Whereas if you're emotionally based, then there's pain attached to it, or maybe there's a gain at the end of the pain. Then you're more likely to achieve your goal. Yeah, that's what I'm hearing you say.
But I'm also able to kind of just jump in on this point here when you said like logic's going to stop you and emotion's going to help you, but because it's at least two sides, that's true and it's not true. In other words, a painful emotion could stop you from achieving a goal, or the joyous emotion could help you achieve it. But if you were joyously going to achieve something and then someone threw logic at you that took you out of it, the logic could stop you, or the logic could help you. Like it could help or hurt, but just generally people are they're making choices based on emotion, but good choices and bad choices. Like it sounds like a logical thing to do this, but I don't really feel like doing that. I won't do it. Or that sounds like a good idea to do this, and I will do it. Their emotion is going to make them not do it or do it, and the logic can just help conjure that emotion up a little bit, but it could also dampen one down. Right? But only if they cared about the logic. You have to have a feeling because of the logic. If someone said, oh, there's 1 million people dying in a country you've never heard of right now, you could be like, okay. But then if they connect that to somewhere that you have people that you care about, then all of a sudden that piece of logic has a completely different emotional response inside of you.
Right. And it becomes more a passion. And as Simon Sinek and wrote in What's Your Why, it becomes your why. It becomes your purpose and your passion.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that you need that. That's the fuel to you reaching your goals, is to have your purpose and your passion and a really good why, a good reason why you're taking that action. We're with David Fairweather. He's a psychotherapist, an author, a trainer, author of Smarter Goals Guide, and he's also a coach as well. Before I move on to our discussion on goals and especially this time of year, I want to talk about your journey. Because, in your bio, here you are, you're an aerospace engineer, designing guided missiles. It's like, great, I'm sure you got a lot of invites to dinner parties with that. But anyway, I'm joking. How did you make the transition from doing that, which is very sort of, logical and mathematical and heavy duty thinking, whereas the work you're doing now as a psychotherapist, as a coach, an author, that's a lot more about creativity and ideas and heart and emotion. How did you go from one to another? How did you do it, and what drove you to do that?
Well, pain drove me to do it. And how I did it was I had to make a serious commitment to myself to find what I wanted to do. Essentially, what happened to me is I left school wanting to get into an artistic field, movie making, music production, or something like that. But at 17 years old, didn't really want to put a lot of effort into commuting into downtown London, working for free as an intern for a number of years in the hopes that maybe I would get the job of my dreams. But we had a big aerospace company in town that hired everyone. And I saw the opportunity of becoming a draftsman so that I could at least stand at a drawing board and do something that was pseudo-artistic, but quite technical. And I'd kind of trained myself to do this technical work. But my heart wasn't really in it. I loved training people. I loved teaching people. And I loved being an expert focal for people to come to for advice. But sitting in front of a cathode ray oscilloscope, designing pieces of engineering objects I didn't really care about. Like I'm not into bombs, I'm not into missiles. Even when I got into planes and cars, they're okay, but I preferred guitars and cameras and things like that. So I just had this habit of doing all the work that was asked of me, and I kind of wore myself out. I did way too much overtime with way too few breaks, and I basically burnt out and developed a chronic musculoskeletal disorder. And then I was faced with this option of either being invaluable and miserable or unemployed and happy. And so I chose option B, which is a rarely chosen thing, but I really didn't think I had any option. I was kind of having a lot of suicidal thoughts. I'd had a migraine for a year.
Oh boy.
Life was just awful, or shit, as they say, technically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I struggled and struggled to keep that job, and just gibbled myself more and more every week, to the point where it felt like I was pouring boiling water on my forearms every morning as I started work. It was just awful. So I gave up, and then I spent a little time healing from that, and I got into psychotherapy and coaching. I did some consciousness training, some biofeedback. I was doing everything I could do selfishly to get better, and then realized that that was actually a viable avenue for me to start training and starting to work in. So I kind of resisted the opportunity to get a job in Starbucks as a barista or something to just earn some money. And I did not like the idea of going back into engineering, because it would put me in the same place again, doing the same thing. And so I spent 4 years not working, just borrowing money left, right, and center on my line of credit, sending myself through trainings and volunteering wherever I could to get experience. And I just had to have a lot of belief in myself. So I just took the path that was speaking to me. And as I walked through that door, other neon doors with signs would light up. And I just started, oh my God, I want to do this training and that training. And everything I kind of learned really lit me up. And I realized I liked helping people, but I didn't need to help them understand a very complex computer-aided design system. I could help them understand their brain and how life is impacting them and what's causing the pain and the pleasure, so that my pain wouldn't be for nothing. I'd be able to kind of help other people going forward. So I really found myself in that work. And I used to want to retire by 55, but now I'll probably work into my 80s or 90s.
Why not? Yeah.
What else am I going to do? Sit around feeling glum? No,
yeah.
The things that really light me up. And I love to see other people succeed at things and help them do things they said they couldn't do. That really inspires me.
Here too. Yeah. Here too. So what I'm hearing you say too is that you're having a passion, taking time out to find yourself and discover what it is inside you that lights you up is also a really critical way to achieve what we want to achieve. Because I didn't hear you talk about the struggle of it. I didn't hear you talk about, I'm broke and poor me. I heard you just sort of fall in love with it and fall in love with life and maybe even fall in love with yourself again, and have that self-love. Where do things like that come into us achieving what we want to achieve in the new year?
Well, I mean, if people set themselves a goal, and then let's say a SMART goal, which is for me a very left-brained thing to do, they've got this logical reason to do something, but there's no feeling behind it, right? And so I understand that this emotional aspect really has to be at the front and center of goal setting, which is why I expanded on the SMART goals to make them smarter, bringing in the emotions and the rewards, because you got to know what's in it for you. But during my process of reimagining David, and finding out how I ticked and what made me work, was addressing the challenges that sometimes come up when people are seeking their goal. Because just because I found what I wanted to do didn't mean it was easy. I had to go over obstacles, go through hoops and hurdles and walls of fire, learning who my shadow self was, getting into my deep self-reflective therapy. So I worked with a lot of different people, coaches, therapists, social workers, psychologists, really understanding me, so that I could understand why it was that basically I'm a recovering type A. And so I had to acknowledge, just like an alcoholic has to, I'm a type A personality. I don't take breaks. I don't remember to pee or eat. I get stuck down a rabbit hole and I'm gone for a while, which made it really easy for me to learn the computer software because I'd invest lunchtimes into doing that. But as I pulled myself out of it, I really had to understand what it was that made me tick. And that's when I really started to look at what I wanted in life. And I'd had this moment when I remember a day when I was 17 years old, or maybe possibly 18, standing in my front room in the living room in that little house in England, hating the fact that I had to go to a factory every day, wear steel toe cap boots, put on an overall and file metal and populate circuit boards just so I could one day become a designer. And I asked myself, what would you rather do? And I don't know where it came from, but my brain went, psychiatrist, cameraman for the BBC, or recording studio engineer. And that's honestly what I would have been really lit up to do. And funnily enough, I got to do kind of all of those things in my journey, because although I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm a psychotherapist. And I got hired to make 50 movies for York University about 10 or 12 years ago.
Oh, wonderful.
And because I'd been doing some recording work with musicians, just for fun, my interests, my hobbies, the things I bought with my overtime money to keep me happy, ended up kind of showing me what I really enjoyed and what I loved. And it was creative outlets. And so as I made meditations that I published on YouTube, people loved those. And I made the little movies and I worked as a therapist. I stumbled into the realization that I'd actually lived my life's dreams that I'd had at 18 years old, what I'd love to be doing instead of this shit. I actually get to do all that stuff now, but it's just as I was going down that path, these things became obvious to me. But even while I was making the movies, it didn't occur to me, oh yeah, you wanted to be a cameraman for the BBC. So I just followed what felt good, and everything kind of opened up and showed itself to me.
I love what you just said. You followed what felt good and everything showed itself and opened up, and you just walked through. You took the chance or the risk or trusted. So for those watching or listening to our conversation today, David, and they're on that precipice of maybe leaving something behind and moving into a new territory, a territory that's more in their heart and their soul, what advice would you give them, to encourage them to keep going and to move forward?
Well, because it's the time of year to set goals, obviously my best advice would be to set a goal. And so I would literally advise them to download my Smarter Goals Guide. It's available at aceyourgoals.com. It's a pop-up you can just easily fill out. And the reason behind that, David, is because I don't think people really clearly think their goals through. They don't really kind of know what will come up. And so as I kind of move people from setting out the logic of it, like what specifically you're going to do and how are you going to achieve that and whatever, we get into the emotion part of it and the rewards, like what's in it for you. If they can do this with reference to that, there are two sides to everything. There's a positive emotion that they're going to get by succeeding, but there's a negative emotion that they're going to get by failing. People don't generally think about that. They just think, oh, I'm going to do this thing, it's going to be really good. But the advice is figure out how painful it's going to be to fail at that, or how painful it's going to be to live a life where you don't accomplish that goal, because that lights this goal up more, because it becomes the solution to inevitable pain and frustration. And the same thing with rewards, that there is a payoff for doing something, but there's also a consequence if you don't do it. And we don't think about, like, I mean, if you're going to go on a journey, the consequences of not putting gas in your car. You're going to end up like calling, CAA, or walking up and down the hard shoulder with a red can, if you're lucky, trying to find some gas from somewhere. When you think about the consequences of that, then you think about stopping to get gas before you go. Or like any child doesn't pee before a journey, and then like 10 minutes in, they're like, I need to stop, I need to go. Think it through. If you don't pee before the journey, what will be the pain? It's like, oh, I'll be in agony and no one will stop. Oh my God, I'll be looking for a bottle or anything. Oh no, I'm going to go and pee now. So get very, very clear on what's in it for you to achieve it, but what consequence you will pay if you fail, and what rewards you're going to get, and what rewards, what consequences from a non-emotional sense, you'd have to pay the price of if you fail. And all of that's detailed in my beautiful Smarter Goals guide, available at aceyourgoals.com, David.
This is good. We're almost out of time. I just want to talk to you about two things: procrastination and perfectionism.
Okay.
How do we break through? Like, for me, perfectionism is about hiding shame. What's your take? But how do we have a breakthrough in those?
Well, I think they're both self-sabotage mechanisms that stop us. It gives us some logical reason, right? When we procrastinate, we're avoiding making a decision. And the reason is because we're afraid of the consequences of that decision, right? Same thing with perfectionism. People will, they won't submit their work because they're afraid it will be judged badly and they'll feel badly. So they kind of keep going until there's nothing that can be said about it that's negative. However, always two sides. And so, there cannot be negative, there cannot not be negative feedback about something. So when we accept that, then that can be really helpful for us. I just go off on a tangent here. I can't remember what your question was just then.
Just about overcoming. How do we overcome and master procrastination and perfectionism?
Yeah, so just recognizing, I saw one of my times in Phoenix, I was introduced to this beautifully crocheted rug that I don't know which particular tribe of Native American had made it, whether it was Navajo or I don't know, but there's, excuse the ignorance, but there is at least a tribe of Native Americans that understand that when they make these beautiful rugs, they always purposefully put a mistake into it. And their rationale for that is that no one is perfect apart from God. And that if we pretend we are perfect, it's an affront to God. And so we should at least recognize that we are imperfect human beings and not pretend that we're not that. So I think facing up to your imperfection helps you overcome perfectionism, because if you think you can be perfect, then you're out of your mind, because that doesn't really exist, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing with procrastination, like making the decision at least enables you to fix a bad decision. But if you avoid making it forever, you don't have anything to fix, but you didn't do anything.
Right.
So these days, I'm a lot more about starting before you're ready, making decisions before you know everything, just because the sooner you make a decision, the sooner you can find out if it was right or wrong, and then you can adjust.
Yeah.
But if you wait forever, until forever, it's like, oh, it would be perfect, but perfectly useless now. Time's passed.
Yeah. Last question. Let's say you had goals of being a cameraman and a musician and everything with the BBC. So let's say we have a goal like that and we're really fixated on that, but it doesn't happen quite the same way. In your way, it was you were doing these videos for York University. So what if that's the outcome? How do we make friends with the fact that things do change, opportunities present itself, and we might not hit the mark, like the dart in your book behind you. We might not hit the bullseye, but man, we're really pretty close, and we're still having fun. We're still enjoying it. So how do we deal with that? Being flexible with our goals.
Well, I'm quite a fan of Napoleon Hill's work, Think and Grow Rich, and I do recommend people to read that. It's quite insightful, and in it he talks about many different aspects of it. But I think, if I recall correctly, it's either him or Bob Proctor that point out that when you set a goal, you set a date. However, that date is made up. You hope the date is good, but until you get closer, you don't quite know. So it's kind of set there, to be a guide, but it might not end up being the bullseye that we hit. That bullseye could shift slightly. Like if I have a goal for doing something by the 1st of February, I can go, full tilt, pushing as much as I can do to make it happen. But if I miss the mark and it happens like a week later, then it only happened a week later because I tried to make it happen when I tried to make it happen. If I didn't try to make it happen then, it wouldn't be a week later, it'd be a year later, or wherever later. So I think if someone, as an example, wanted to be a cameraman for the BBC, but they found themselves heading in that direction, but not there yet, it doesn't mean they can't get there. It just means the date that they have for themselves to get there may need to change. And so realizing that the bullseye is an approximate placeholder for reality. and that we can be quite close to it, but it would be bizarre if we kept picking dates for everything, and that was the date that we got that job, and that was the date that this competition. I'm saying that would be the universe really loving us up in a good way.
Yeah.
Better to just realize that you get close enough, and then maybe that's good enough.
Yeah. Yeah, to be happy with where we're at, to find peace.
Not the destination. As much as I'm about goals, and you should set smart goals or smarter goals, it really is because you should be enjoying the journey, right? It's like I've got great aspirations in life and great big goals, but if I don't wake up tomorrow, I will be quite happy. And I'm not suggesting don't let me wake up tomorrow, but I'm saying, like, it is what it is. And it's like, okay, well, I never finished that, but I enjoyed trying to finish it.
Yeah.
Like, we should enjoy the journey. We should savor things and not like suffer. And then if it doesn't happen, that's a lot of painful consequences to have paid for nothing.
Yeah.
At least enjoy it. And that's where the passion comes in.
I love it. And that's a nice sort of place to end our conversation, David. We were with David Fairweather. What a joy. Go ahead, do it. Shameless self-promotion.
Well, I do think it is goal setting season, David. So and I don't say this lightly, it sounds like a very narcissistic thing to say, but I totally believe this is the best free product on goal setting on planet Earth. I've taken basically every goal guide that you could possibly find, and I've whittled it all down to make sure there's nothing missing from this. So if you go to aceyourgoals.com, you can download the Smarter Goals Guide, and it's a beautiful document that's going to take you through every step of goal setting and really help you set a declaration by the end of it so that you can tell people what you're going to do, but you'll know that you're more likely to achieve it because you'll understand your why, you'll understand the payoff, you'll understand what's going to happen if you don't achieve it. And that should be all the neuro juice you need to get your brain pushing and pulling you wherever you need to go.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. Well, you're a delight. I want to also thank you, the audience, for watching or listening. Thank you for being part of RiSE, the podcast. Again, our goal is to inspire individuals like you to rise up, inspire, make an impact, be socially aware, and continue the entrepreneurial spirit to make life in the world a little bit better. Next week, our guest is Tom St. Louis as we wrap up the year. Until then, I'm your host, David Cohen. And until next week, rise up. And David, pleasure. Thank you for this.
Thank you. And goodbye, everyone. It was great being on the show.